Hi, I'm Edmund, CEO and co-founder of the Learning and Performance Institute, and today is a very exciting day for me. I'm here with Dale Parmenter, who's the CEO and founder of DRPG, one of the best international creative communications agencies in the world. And I'm excited because I want to know what's going to happen with tech as we move forward, and maybe how this industry is going to influence learning and development. Dale, do you want to tell us a bit about what you've built here? I've had the fortune today to be walking around with you, and I've done about 10,000 steps.
Yeah, well, welcome, Ed. So we're, as you say, a creative communications agency. We've been going 45 years. We help organisations across the globe to bring their message alive. Now, whether that's a sales message, whether it's a learning message, it's all about audience experience, and whether that's internal or external audiences. So for us, it's all about creating that amazing experience and activation of whatever the message is.
Yeah, and that comes out when you walk around the premises that you have here, because you're committed to this idea of purpose. I wonder if I can be really direct right at the beginning then, what are you seeing as what we should be looking at in terms of great content in 2025, 2026?
Well, content is king for everything. And what we get to see is an awful lot of content being produced by our clients, but then needs to be brought alive and create the experience and the engagement for the audience to really take that content in and learn or do a behavioural change. One of the big things that are moving forward at the moment is the development of AI. We're seeing an awful lot around AI. Some people are seeing it as just a bit of a gimmick and will it last? But what we see is things like the digital twinning, where we're starting to see AI now taking on that learning experience. So it doesn't replace the human, but what it does replace is some of the really awful, boring stuff that we've seen over the years that's online.
Speaking on behalf of the entire learning and development industry, we're all for that, Dale, obviously, of course. You said there, content is king. And now in my profession, there's a lot of people would argue that context is king. I know you're not a big fan of kind of vanilla content being produced left, right and centre. It's all about the efficacy and the meaningfulness, because I've spent the day with you today. But how does that look in real terms? Before we move to the digital twinning, how are you making really meaningful content?
It's going back to understanding that audience. So yes, absolutely, context is right. Understanding who the audience is. Everybody takes that messaging in different ways. Some are very visual people, some more analytical people. So how do we understand the audience and what we want the audience to do? So it's the why. It's the traditional, it hasn't changed. Why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve? And what do we want the audience to do differently after they've been to that event, watched something online, watched a film, whatever it is? What do we want them to do differently, and how do we measure that change and that shift?
Yeah, that's the meaningfulness angle, isn't it? And I applaud what you're doing in terms of you're focusing on creating meaningful experiences, but also without forsaking the idea of impact. And is that the trick here? Is that what makes you?
Absolutely. We want a memorable experience for the right reasons as well. But that's only half the story. They can remember things. They can go and talk to their friends and in the pub or whatever and say, I've just had a fantastic day, I've just learnt this, or I've just had this experience. But if they still don't do anything differently beyond that point, then what's the point? So they have to then change their behaviour, and it's the behavioural change. And whether it's we want people to buy more product, or we want people to sell more product, or be more brand advocates, if they don't make that change. So in the experiences that we put together, we have to make sure they do something differently, and we can measure it beyond that point.
And you kind of casually threw in AI in there.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring you back to that. In a world where obviously we're seeing generative AI allow anybody to produce content, where does that leave DRPG? Because everything that I've heard from you and your colleagues today is about how positive it is that you're engaging with it. But I also hear from a lot of creative comms agencies that, this is a threat to us because everybody can produce content. Yeah. Now, I would imagine you would say, well, we operate at a high quality level and we're really driven by purpose. Yeah. How can we create a culture within organizations, if I bring it to learning, right, where it's not about producing bland vanilla content and everybody's doing that. It's more about really working on a brief to produce the best, most meaningful, impactful, purpose-driven, efficacious content. Is there like a hint you would maybe give to people who are looking to do that?
I think don't get threatened by AI. Embrace AI. AI is a tool, and treat it as a tool, not a threat. Use it in a way that's going to help you create that content. One thing that we'll always need is the human element, as you say, to take the brief, understand the audience, and then from that start to work out what the context is, but what the content is as well. Now, AI has got limitations. Now, whether in the future those limitations will be gone, who knows where it's going. But we've got to remember what AI is. AI is basic plagiarism. It can't learn anything new. It can't create anything new. People say it's a threat to the creative industries. No, it's not. Absolutely not, because it can't innovate. We innovate as human beings, so we have to keep bringing that innovation to it so it learns and it will take that message for us and help us with it. But we have to be in control and stay in control of it.
That's a really, really interesting angle, actually. I love the idea of AI being a group of plagiarists.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. It's very controversial. I'm sure when this gets pushed out onto social, there'll be a lot of people have comments in relation to that. One of my friends in the learning profession lives in Holland, says a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So are you arguing that human intelligence is at least equally as valuable as artificial intelligence?
I'd say it's
in
still,
the creative
in the creative sense, I think it's still more valuable.
Really? Okay.
Because when we talk about AI, say it can't create new things. It can mix things up to make it look new, but it's not new. So what would eventually happen, I suppose, I'm just surmising now, it would just get blander and blander and blander because AI can't innovate. So we need that human context to keep feeding it, to keep, yes, regurgitating things, remaking things and coming up with new ways of working. But that's the human. The human feeds the funnel. Yeah. AI takes it and takes it forward. So that's where I see it. But also that, the interesting comment about the fool there, for me, we also got to be careful of, with any technology, and I've seen it over the years, and I've been around long enough to have seen it. Do you remember the interactive CD-ROMs?
Of course, yeah.
They were awful.
Yeah.
And
really
some
terrible.
people still use them.
And expensive.
And very expensive.
Yeah.
We made a fortune out of them years ago. But everybody wanted one. I remember even saying to the point, but your video is going to look awful because we can only do it the size of a postage stamp. This is like 25, 30 years ago. No, it doesn't matter. I want it because it's the next new thing, the next new shiny thing. And we have to be really, really careful with technology that we don't take it for the wrong reasons. We take it because everybody else is taking it and it's because it's new and shiny. Else you will be the fool. Because some cases, you just want something that's really basic and really engaging, get people just drawing on a piece of paper, collaborating together around a table. That may be all you need. So use it as a tool, not as the next new shiny thing I've got to have.
I agree. I think, as you know, Dale, at the LPI, we've majored on this idea of a convenience-efficacy paradox. And just because something is easy or makes life easier doesn't necessarily mean it's meaningful. So, again, I applaud you for doing that. Let's drill into the learning side then. You touched there very cleverly, I thought, and made me think about it, on the idea of sort of virtual coaching and digital twinning. Now, to me, this is fascinating because if we go back 10 or 15 years, we can see that the perfect hybrid of human and technology in terms of learning was virtual classroom training, right? Because it was anytime, anywhere, you could do bite-sized and you could watch the recordings. I feel like we're on the cusp of something else now, and you guys here are working and already have produced something which I think could be revolutionary in terms of supporting learning. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is where it takes it to another level. We've all seen those modules with the online modules, and yes, you can go back and play it back again, and if you didn't quite get it. What this does is get the interaction. So now we have a digital twin, which could be yourself, that is there talking to the person who's being trained and answering their questions and doing that virtual coaching. It's drawing on a vast array of information. It will do what we want it to do in the way we want it to do it, in the personality and the tone of voice we want it to do. But all intents and purposes, this digital twin has got all the knowledge it needs to be able to help that person with the knowledge that they want from it. Now that makes it much more engaging. They're in effect talking to another human being, because it is a human being in effect, because it started as a human being. And so when we, the most simplest way, chat box. I mean, I don't bother with it. I can't be bothered to press the button. But it's not really interaction what you're getting there. This is true as if you are talking to someone.
And do you see this, well, let me put it a different way. I see this as supplementing learning experiences as well as being the learning experience. So one could argue that you could go on a course, a linear learning experience, start to finish over a few hours or a few days. But then beyond that, to avoid the idea of the Ebbinghaus curve, you could also then get access to this supportive coach in the flow of your own work. So when you need answers to something that was maybe covered in the course, you can actually, in effect, communicate with the person who was delivering it.
Absolutely. You can contact that digital coach anytime you wish, any time of day, and say, can you give me a bit more clarification around something, or I don't quite get that bit, and it will then answer you and talk to you as though they were an ordinary human being.
I find this incredible, actually, because I think it's the scalability of this solution that's probably the most attractive. This is something that companies can implement almost immediately. So what would be the process of, so let's say, for example, I run the LPI, it's an international institute for people who work in learning and development. All of those thousands of members worldwide, where they look to the institute for guidance and research. But this is, you say content is king, but content is also everywhere. So how do they're looking for somebody or an organization to say, look, this is the good stuff. So you've got organizations like Get Abstract, companies like that who will distill novels or huge pieces of literature into kind of bite-sized content. This is going further than that. This is making this even more in tune with what the individual wants to learn. How process-wise does one go about creating that? Are we talking weeks to produce?
No, it's initially it would be creating the avatar or the digital twin of you.
Okay.
So
Heaven forbid.
It's a relatively simple task in the studio. Do some work with the guys. So filming you, recording your sound, getting your mannerisms, getting to understand the way you present. So we create that, and now we have to teach it to be you. So lots of different softwares, lots of different technologies that sits behind that to make sure this is authentic, or you look authentic and you look you. Beyond that point then, you may say, well, actually, because we're a global organisation, we need it in multi-languages. It's not a problem. So somebody in Chinese wants to interact with you, you will speak back in Chinese to them with your accent. So you'll be in Mandarin.
Well, that's quite with something, isn't it? It's going to be amusing,
existing accent. And so you start to see the advantages of you can be everywhere. At the same time. So your thousands of members could all be talking to you at the same time, asking different questions in different languages about different topics.
It's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing,
And this can be produced pretty easily now.
It's already been produced, for a major supermarket, we did something very similar where they wanted to personalise the message from every single store as different to reach the community. And thousands of those digital twins were produced. And when I first saw it, I thought, blimey, did that person come into the studio and create thousands of versions? I said, no, they didn't even say any of those words.
It's incredible. It's really incredible. I think it's going to really mix up things in the learning sector because of that scale.